From an owner who barely spoke to a manager who couldn't stay quiet, did Chef Ramsay succeed with saving the mixing bowl? In the third episode of season 1, Chef Ramsay headed over to the mixing bowl in Belmore, New York. This place was run by Billy Galletti alongside his wife Lisa. While the business was successful in the beginning, after an entire decade, things went downhill. Due to the rising competition in the area, the restaurant took a massive hit. This establishment was on the verge of closing down, which not only took a toll on the couple's finances, but their relationship as well. Since things were crumbling at a rapid pace, the couple had given up on their hopes of running the business and sustaining their marriage. As a last resort, the owners reached out to Chef Ramsay hoping that he could give them one final chance. But could Chef Ramsay really help them? Well, Mixing Bowl started off as a close-knit family. Billy, who was actually a chef, was pretty hands-on as an owner. He would sometimes be the cleaner, the mechanic, the delivery boy, or even the garbage man. You name it, and Billy would do it. Unlike many other pompous owners that we've seen on Kitchen Nightmares so far, Billy was pretty different. He did just about everything at the restaurant because if he didn't, the business would probably not be alive. Meanwhile, Lisa, his wife, wasn't far behind in sharing the responsibilities. She matched Billy's commitment, and despite being a co-owner, she worked as a full-time waitress at the restaurant as well. Billy's sister Lynn joined the couple to help run the business as well because, like I said, these guys were ready to give it their all. However, it had gotten to a point where Lisa much preferred seeing the restaurant fail rather than seeing her relationships die. But now, here comes the real boss. Meet the manager Mike, who actually behaved like he was the owner. While he hardly did anything at work, he made sure that the rest of the staff had a difficult time under his command.
It makes absolutely no sense. That doesn't make sense. Shut up.
Mike believed that he was the best manager ever, that they were one big family, that everyone loved him, and blah blah blah. But in truth, he was a pain in the butt. All this guy really did was eat, drink booze, and constantly socialize with the customers. Basically, he did just about everything else other than being a manager. Clearly, Mike was a parasite who was living off the owners' hard work and commitment. And well, everyone felt this way too. But it amazes me why they still chose to keep him on the job. On one side of the coin, Mike was having a blast, while on the other, Billy and his family constantly lived under stress. The owners had really lost interest in their business and even their own lives. This was reflected onto the staff, who would endlessly wait for a customer to walk through the door. Billy couldn't understand how else he could revive the business, and this is what he had to say.
Now it's at the end of the road. I'm so stubborn about keeping it alive, but am I hurting myself? Am I hurting my family?
The restaurant was drowning in debt, and the couple no longer had any money nor enthusiasm to keep it afloat. The restaurant was in such a dire situation that it would probably close down in a week if nothing was done soon. And considering how dejected the owners and staff were, when Chef Ramsay arrived, he felt the same vibe from the restaurant. Chef Ramsay wasn't impressed at all by the interior, and right off the bat, he noticed how quiet it was. Well, this wasn't a really good start. Just as he walked in, Mike, being his usual pompous self, pushed through the owners and made his way to greet the famous chef. Lisa, at the back of her mind, was praying that Ramsay wouldn't be too harsh on them since they were already in bad shape. But Chef Ramsay couldn't even figure out what kind of eatery the Mixing Bowl was. When he asked Mike about it, this is what he said.
It's new American type cuisine, salads, some wraps, a little bit of pasta, like a health spa.
Well, it looks like everything was mixed up at the Mixing Bowl. However, you know how Chef Ramsay has this kind of intuition where he can sense who is what? So what I mean by that is that he could easily make out that Mike was just a manager by position, but he didn't really manage anything. And as he took a dig at Mike, you could see Lisa celebrating Chef Ramsay slamming him sarcastically. This was something that the owners were too scared to do for all these years. And this is why I love Chef Ramsay so dearly. He's so unapologetically sarcastic. Soon after, it didn't take Chef Ramsay very long to notice that the restaurant was on its last leg. The paper table cover, the walls, the paint, and really everything was in shambles. Chef Ramsay then decided to sample the food, and as he looked through the menu, he asked Mike about a particular dish. Just as you'd expect, Mike knew nothing about it.
Thought you'd know about it if you're the manager and it's on your menu.
Well,
Anyway.
Chef Ramsay tried his very best not to get agitated and went ahead and placed his order. He got the award-winning crab cakes, a zucchini pancake, and the North Atlantic salmon. Mike, being the awkward man he is, made the entire dining experience really uncomfortable for Chef Ramsay. He literally stared down the famous chef as he ate his meal. But Chef Ramsay isn't someone who puts up with weird behavior, so he called Mike over and asked him for a little space. This guy was honestly just asking for trouble. But that aside, the crab cakes were surprisingly better than Ramsay expected. Of course, it wasn't even close to being award-winning, but at least it was fresh. As for the zucchini pancakes and salmon, they were a bit too bland and soggy for Chef Ramsay's liking. Now, as a little side note, Mike thought that every customer that walked in was charmed by him. But Chef Ramsay bursted his little bubble and made sure that he understood that wasn't the case. The famous chef then quizzed Mike about the ingredients of a dish, which the manager should know. However, Mike made a fool of himself by messing it up. Chef Ramsay then decided to have a chat with the person who would actually know something about the food, which was Billy. This seemed to be a moment that he was dreading. A world-famous chef was gonna scrutinize his knowledge on cooking, so I don't blame Billy for wanting to shit his pants. Well, predictably, Chef Ramsay was pretty straightforward as always. However, he was pretty subdued in his feedback compared to the other episodes we've seen. He complimented Billy for the crab cakes as well, which is a pretty rare thing for Chef Ramsay to do.
The crab cakes were good. Thanks. Yes. That was the high point.
Now, while the owners were all ears when it came to Chef Ramsay's criticisms, Mike was the only one who was bothered about it. Out of nowhere, Mike started to talk about how much the customers loved him because he gave away free food. The famous chef didn't waste a second more to prove him wrong by saying,
If you give something away and it's free, who's going to complain about it?
Later on, Chef Ramsay left and came back to observe the dinner service. Honestly, it was really easy to see why the restaurant was losing so much business. The manager Mike was handing out 50% discount coupons to everyone. While there are different ways to attract in customers, handing out discounts and free meals is the worst method for a restaurant that's already under a loss. But for Mike, it was all about making a name for himself. He was throwing away money that he didn't even make, so how would it hurt him anyway, right? Chef Ramsay then went over to check with Billy, asking him why he would ever come up with such a hideous arrangement. But sadly, as an owner, Billy seemed to have absolutely no control over it. During the 10 years that the restaurant was open, they were giving away 50% discount coupons for the last 8 years. No wonder they were losing so much money. On one hand, Billy would work all day and break a sweat from his hard labor. And on the other hand, Mike would take his work, throw it into the toilet, and flush it all down, pushing the restaurant further into debt. But wait, there's more. This wasn't the only time Mike gave away food for free. When Chef Ramsay asked to see all the other banners, this is what Mike walked up with.
Where did you get all these from?
I have a place, they make them up for me. It was expensive.
Holy mackerel.
The famous chef was shocked at the sight of this. Already pissed about Mike's poor managerial skills, Chef Ramsay was pushed further off the edge by these banners. Understandably, Chef Ramsay asked Mike if any of the banners had an effect on the business. And Mike, without any hesitation, replied by saying this.
None. Is there anything else that I should know?
That's it.
But wait. It looks like Mike wasn't done yet. If you thought that the banners were way too much, then wait till you see what Mike pulled out of the dump. You really won't believe this, guys. This guy was driving Chef Ramsay nuts.
Mom, get me out of here. Jesus Christ.
Ramsay then asked Mike to get rid of the signs before anyone saw them. It would only drive away the few customers they even had. This was a total nightmare. There was a chef who did everything, a manager who did nothing, and a wife who was on the brink of depression. Would the famous chef succeed in turning this mess of a business around? First things first, Chef Ramsay had to get the owners in order. I mean, the couple knew they were in trouble, but they had to know why. So Chef Ramsay gave Billy and his wife Lisa the harsh truth about the restaurant. Plus, he gave them some extra insight from the observations he made throughout the day.
You seriously have to start thinking as a businessman, not leaving it to someone like Michael to sort of focus on the baloney and bull.
He made them realize that it was time to either step things up or shut the place down for good. It's quite understandable that Billy was emotionally attached to the restaurant. But when it comes to a business that's hurting your personal life, is it really worth it? This was the main concern that both Billy and Chef Ramsay had. But Billy was willing to give it one last try. Cause, well, if things actually failed, it would really feel like a death in the family. So with a renewed spirit, Billy decided to step things up and hope to fulfill his passion by being the boss that he should be. Meanwhile, Chef Ramsay had a bigger problem to take care of. And I mean Mike. The following day, Ramsay tried to level with Mike by doing the one things the owners never did to this day. The famous chef brought in a wood chipper and asked Mike to get rid of the past. Wondering how? Well, check this out.
It's time to say goodbye to Valentine's Day.
Chef Ramsay's move was a double-edged sword. On one side, he got rid of the banners that ruined the restaurant, but on the other, he gave a silent message to Mike that his behavior wouldn't be put up with anymore. But you could see from Mike's expression that he wasn't all that happy with Chef Ramsay's intervention. He was trying his best to keep his cool, but the question was, for how long? Anyway, later, Chef Ramsay shared the results of his research on the number of restaurants in the vicinity with the owners. And despite being in Belmore for the last 10 years, none of them were aware that there were 41 restaurants that surrounded them. While there were restaurants catering to all sorts of cuisines, the one thing that was missing was a restaurant that offered healthier food. And this is what the mixing bowl should have capitalized on. With the new restaurant idea, it was now time for Chef Ramsay to spark up Billy's passion for cooking. Chef Ramsay and Billy both made a dish with 15 ingredients, and the best one would go on the menu for the dinner service. But Billy's dish turned out to be so good that Chef Ramsay chose both the dishes to be on the menu. Chef Ramsay could see the twinkle in Billy's eyes, but Lisa didn't want to get her hopes up too high just yet. She had been through so much that it was hard to believe that Chef Ramsay could just turn things around in an instant. Fast forward to the dinner service, and the restaurant was packed with customers. This was a welcome sign for better days, but would the kitchen be able to cope with the pressure? The service started off on a good note, but everything came crashing down once Mike stepped in. Mike, being Mike, did absolutely nothing other than talk to the customers. But then, Chef Ramsay was informed of something that made him absolutely furious. Hear it from Lisa yourselves.
I am tired of Mike taking half the money from the tip cup. That's not fair.
Yep, Mike somehow thought that he had the authority to take 50% of all the tips that were given to the servers. This time around, the customers actually left the restaurant delighted with the food and the service. But Chef Ramsay was done with Mike's high-handedness. During the staff meeting, everyone pointed their fingers at Mike, but this is what he thought.
Do you think you would have those tips if I wasn't here?
According to Mike, the only reason why the customers came to the restaurant was because of him. But Mike forgot that he was just an employee and not the owner. And for once, when Mike showed his teeth to Lisa, who was trying to explain his place in the restaurant as a manager, Billy spoke up for the first time like the boss. And this time, he really meant every word he said.
I'm fighting for my life here. You right now need to step up to the plate and make the changes every freaking day, every minute of the day. That's it.
With Billy on the right track and finally taking charge, Chef Ramsay decided it was time to work on the decor. He hoped to turn the restaurant into an entirely different place. When Chef Ramsay unveiled the new changes, everyone was stunned. Ramsay then introduced the new menu. And this time, the food was healthier, lighter, and looked more appetizing as well. After seeing all the changes, the owners finally believed that there was hope for the restaurant. Soon after, Chef Ramsay, along with Mike and Lisa, headed out to distribute some flyers. They invited customers over to the grand relaunch of their restaurant. Ramsay even went as far as to invite the entire New York Dragons American football team for a quick bite at the restaurant. Advertising sure does go a long way, but would it help turn things around for the mixing bowl? Being hours away from the relaunch, Mike was already beginning to feel the stress. What's more, he started to frantically move around and was unsure of what he needed to do. Just as the restaurant opened for the night, a new problem had surfaced. Mike had overbooked the reservations. This guy definitely didn't deserve a second chance. Mike had just ruined what could have been a big day for everyone. And as always, he did this single-handedly. When Chef Ramsay asked Mike about the whole mix-up, he put the blame on Kim. He said that it was her fault since she's never been in charge of the reservations. The one night that everyone thought that Mike would take charge and work properly, he started it off by blaming someone else. The restaurant was packed with customers for the first time in years. But this wasn't something anyone expected or wanted. While everyone was waiting on 3 to 4 tables, Mike was just seen chilling with his friends that showed up for the night. Chef Ramsay was pissed, but he waited until after the service to give Mike a piece of his mind. 2 hours into the service, and the New York Dragons finally arrived for dinner. While Lisa frantically tried to fix a table for them, she realized that Mike never wrote their names down for reservation. They were the most awaited customers, and the manager forgot to add them in? That's embarrassing. And to make things even worse, when confronted about it, he started to make a scene in the middle of the service.
Why do you keep saying that?
Because I wasn't told.
At this point, Mike was the restaurant's biggest liability. And if they wanted to survive, he had to go. But Billy shocked Chef Ramsay with his decision.
Place give me a second chance. So Mike, shoot me a second chance, and we're gonna move forward together.
Mike probably understood that he was in fact dispensable and surprisingly got his act together. He actually killed it for the rest of the night. After a successful relaunch, the mixing bowl took off like never before. Lisa and Billy looked happier than ever, and their marriage was reignited much like their business. As for Mike, he finally became the manager that everyone wanted him to be. The restaurant continued to be in business for the next 2 years until it finally closed down in 2009. Currently speaking, Billy is the president of Junior Ulta Foods, and as for Mike, he's probably somewhere enjoying his Diet Coke. Unfortunately, there's not much else on these guys online. So for that reason, I'll sign off for now. Have a good one, guys.